Welcome to America Quantified. This channel breaks down the United States through data, demographics, migration, housing, income, and the long-run forces shaping the country. No political yelling, no hot takes, just numbers, sources, and measured conclusions. If that's your kind of content, subscribe now, because every episode is built to be evergreen. And if you're watching from the US, tell us your state in the comments. I read them, and they shape what we cover next. Now, let's quantify America. People still say 330 million Americans, but as of July 1st, 2025, it's closer to 341.8 million, 341,784,857 to be precise. Here's the part that matters. This is only about 4.2% of the world's population. The world has about 8.14 billion people. So yes, America is massive, but it's also a relatively small slice of humanity, with an outsized footprint. Quick question for you. Does America feel like a country of 342 million where you live? Or does your metro area feel like its own separate universe? Zoom out further. By population, the US sits in a very specific position. India and China are in a league of their own. The European Union as a bloc is larger than the United States. And then there's the US, the largest advanced economy by population. Here's a comparison that makes it click. The US is about 340 million on the World Bank's 2024 population series. Russia is about 144 million. That's roughly 2.5 Russias in one country. And notice this. The average EU country in the chart is about 16.7 million people. That number will become useful in the next section. If you've lived in Europe, comment below. Does the US feel more like one country or more like 50 different countries? Now let's put the 342 million on a map. 3 states, California, Texas, and Florida, hold 94.5 million people. That's 27.7% of the entire country, more than a quarter of America living in just 3 states. Here's a concrete comparison. Florida alone has about 23.5 million people. That means Florida is bigger than the average EU country we just mentioned at 16.7 million. Texas is almost double the average EU country, and California is more than 2 of them. What state are you in? And do you feel your state is gaining people or losing people? Now comes one of the most misunderstood ideas in American geography. America is huge. But Americans cluster. New Jersey has about 1,267 people per square mile. Alaska has 1.3. That is not a small difference. That is almost a 1,000 to 1 difference in density inside the same country. This is why America can feel like 2 different planets. Dense corridor living and long commutes versus wide open space and a different relationship to land, infrastructure, and politics. If you've traveled across regions, Northeast Corridor, California coast, Florida, tell us where the biggest density shock hit you. Now let's quantify the default American experience. About 80.12% of Americans live in urban areas. Only 19.88% live in rural areas. But here's the twist. 20% of America is still enormous. That rural share translates to roughly 67.9 million people. And here's a comparison that works. France's population in 2024 is about 68.6 million. So rural America is basically a France spread out across an entire continent. If you live rural, what's the biggest trade-off? Jobs, healthcare access, internet, schools. If you live urban, what's the trade-off? Housing, traffic, cost of living. Drop your answer with your state. Now, movement. Between 2024 and 2025, Texas added about 391,000 people. Florida added about 197,000. North Carolina added about 146,000. That means that in 1 year, a single state can absorb the equivalent of a mid-sized city. This is one of those moments where the last decade matters. Since the mid-2010s, and especially after COVID, the value of location changed. Remote work expanded, housing prices shifted, and migration patterns accelerated. You don't need to agree on the politics of any of it to see the demographic result. The growth is not evenly spread. If this kind of measured data-first analysis is useful, a like tells the algorithm to show it to more people. Percent growth tells a different story. South Carolina led at 1.5%, Idaho at 1.4%, North Carolina at 1.3%. And this is a key idea, percent is not scale. A smaller state can grow fast in percentage terms while adding fewer people than a giant state like Texas. So here's the real question. Is America becoming more concentrated in a few megastates, or is population redistributing into a wider sunbelt? If you moved in the last 5 years, comment this. Your old state right-pointing arrow, your new state right-pointing arrow, the real reason you moved. Now we're going to talk about the most powerful long-run number in demographics, fertility. Replacement level is around 2.1 births per woman. In 2023, the US is 1.62, the EU is 1.38, Japan is 1.20, South Korea is 0.72, and Israel is the outlier here, 2.89, above replacement. Here's the analytical point. The US is below replacement, but it is not in the same collapse zone as parts of East Asia. That gap changes the long-run outlook: schools, labor force, housing demand, and fiscal pressure. If you're in your 20s or 30s, what's the biggest barrier to having kids? Housing, childcare, healthcare, time, or something else? Now let's look at the direction, not just the snapshot. U.S. fertility fell from about 2.06 in 2000 to 1.62 in 2023. Europe and Japan declined too, but from lower starting points. And you can see the broader timeline inside the data: the 2008 era, then the 2010s, then the pandemic shock and the after effects. This is why demography is slow, but not static. A decade can permanently change the slope of a line. Now for something most people miss. While the country grows overall, some states still lose population. In 2025, only 5 states declined: California, Hawaii, New Mexico, Vermont, and West Virginia. And the reasons vary. Sometimes it's cost of living. Sometimes it's limited job growth. Sometimes it's geography. Sometimes it's long-run structural decline. The key idea is this: America is not moving as one unit. It is redistributing. If you live in one of these states, tell us what you think is happening. And if you left one of them, tell us why. A quick but important structural fact: America is very close to a 50-50 split. 50.5% female, 49.5% male. That difference is small, but it becomes larger in older ages because women, on average, live longer. This matters because an aging population is not gender neutral. It changes healthcare demand, retirement patterns, and household structure. Now the age breakdown. About 21.5% of Americans are under 18. About 18.0% are 65 and older. And about 60.5% are 18 to 64, the working age majority. Here's the so what. If fertility stays low, the under 18 share tends to shrink. And if life expectancy stays high, the 65-plus share tends to grow. That pushes pressure onto the working age share, tax base, services, healthcare, and labor supply. Median age pulls the whole story together. The median American is about 38.5 years old. The global median is 30.9. The European Union is 44.7. Japan is about 49.8. And look at these anchors. India is around 29. China is 38.4, almost identical to the US. Russia is 39.6. The analytic takeaway is simple. The US is older than the world, but younger than the oldest rich regions. That positioning affects long-run growth potential. If you're watching from outside the US, tell us your country and your sense of aging. Do you feel it in your labor market and politics? Now, identity, as measured by census categories. What matters here is methodology. Hispanic or Latino is an ethnicity, not a race, and overlaps across categories. In the recent census estimates shown here, white alone is 74.8%, black alone is 13.7%, Asian alone is 6.7%, 2 or more races is 3.1%, and Hispanic or Latino, any race, is 20.0%. This is not just a social story, it is a geographic story, because these shares vary massively by state and metro area. Does your local area look like these national shares or totally different? Now add the factor that changes the demographic engine: immigration. Depending on the definition used here, the foreign-born share is about 14.1%, and an alternative migrant stock estimate is 15.2%. Here's a useful conversion. 14% of 342 million is not a small niche. It's on the order of 50 million people. And analytically, this matters because when fertility is below replacement, population growth depends more on migration and longevity. What's your community experience? More newcomers, fewer, no change. And if you've lived in Europe too, how does the US compare? Now money. The US median household income in 2024 was $81,604 inflation adjusted. In 2023, it was $80,002, so a gain of about $1,602. And the framing here matters. This is part of a choppy post-pandemic recovery. Some households felt real improvement. Others felt like prices moved faster than paychecks. If you want to help the video reach the right audience, comment this. In my area, $80,000 feels like comfortable, tight, or impossible. Now the part that makes America feel like 50 different economic systems. Massachusetts, $104,828. New Jersey, $104,294. Maryland, $102,905. On the other end, Mississippi, $59,127. West Virginia, $60,798. Louisiana, $60,986. That's a gap of more than $45,000 in the median. And here's a simple, memorable comparison. Massachusetts is earning close to double Mississippi's median household income. This is why national debates often feel disconnected. Because the typical household depends heavily on which state you're talking about. Tell us your state and your best one-sentence description of the local economy. So what do 341.8 million Americans really look like? They look like a country that is huge but concentrated, mostly urban, but with a rural population the size of a major country. Below replacement fertility, but not identical to Europe or Japan. Aging, but positioned between a young world and older rich regions. And economically diverse, where state-level differences can feel like different nations. If you found this useful, subscribe to America Quantified. The goal is simple. Understand the United States through data, clearly, consistently, and without the noise. Next episode, we'll zoom in on one of the forces behind migration and inequality. America's metro map, housing, cost of living, and why people are moving where they move. Until then, drop your state in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.